Welcome back to The Reset. I'm John Bell. We are going off script today because we have to. By now, you've seen the breaking news. In an act of brazen, unprovoked aggression, U.S. Special Operations Forces have launched a direct military strike inside the sovereign borders of Venezuela. Their objective? To decapitate a foreign government. As we speak, Nicolas Maduro is being forcibly extracted to the United States. The administration is calling this a, quote, victory for justice, unquote. They're calling it a strike against narco-terrorism. I call it what it is, an illegal war, a constitutional crisis, and the final receipt for $1 billion bribe paid by big oil. Today, we're going to dismantle the lies they're telling you one by one. First of all, let's talk about the fentanyl lie. Let's start with the pretext. You're hearing the White House claim this was necessary to stop the flow of fentanyl into American neighborhoods. They want you to believe that Caracas is the head of the snake. That's just a lie, and it's a lazy one. The reality of the fentanyl trade is well documented by the DEA's own intelligence. Fentanyl isn't a Venezuelan product. The precursor chemicals, specifically NPP and ANPP, are manufactured in China. From there, they are shipped not to Caracas, but to Pacific ports in Mexico, where cartels like Sinaloa and CJNG synthesize them in super labs before trafficking them across the U.S. southern border. Venezuela is, at most, a tertiary transit route for cocaine. It's statistically irrelevant to the fentanyl crisis killing Americans. This war isn't about saving American lives. It's about finding a convenient villain. Now let's talk about the hypocrisy. Juan Orlando Hernandez, if you've heard that name. And if you need proof that this administration doesn't care about quote unquote narco states, look no further than the man Donald Trump just pardoned. While we are invading Venezuela ostensibly to stop drugs, the president has issued a full pardon to Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras. Let's look at his resume. In 2024, a federal jury in the Southern District of New York convicted Hernandez of conspiring to import 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. This is a man who prosecutors proved accepted millions of dollars in bribes from El Chapo, a man who was quoted on record saying he wanted to, and I quote, shove the drugs right up the noses of the gringos. So let's get this straight. If you're a right-wing autocrat who serves American capital, you can flood our streets with cocaine and get a presidential pardon. But if you're a left-wing autocrat sitting on the world's largest oil reserves, you get a SEAL team at your door. Let's talk about the real motives for this, the $1 billion deal. So why now? Why Venezuela? It's not ideology, it's geology. We have to go back to May 2024, Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump sits down with roughly 20 executives from the biggest oil and gas companies in the world, Chevron, Exxon, Occidental. He made them a nakedly transactional offer. He told them that if they raised $1 billion for his campaign, he would scrap environmental regulations, block wind energy, and give them the keys to the kingdom. Well, they paid up. That was a pittance for them. And now they're collecting. This invasion is the dividend. Venezuela holds the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. This isn't foreign policy. It's a hostile corporate takeover with air support. Now let's talk about the ideologues, specifically Marco Rubio. Of course, every war needs its salesman. And inside the regime, that salesman is Marco Rubio. For Rubio, this is personal. It's pathological. His family left Cuba in 1956, ironically before Castro actually took power. But he has built his entire political identity on a vendetta against the troika of tyranny, as he calls them. But let's be clear, Rubio doesn't hate authoritarianism. He envies it. He doesn't want to liberate Venezuelans. He wants to install a client state that answers to Miami and Washington. He is using American blood and treasure to fight the ghosts of his own family history and cowardice. Now let's talk about the constitutional crisis. I want to talk about the law because what just happened is a direct violation of the War Powers Resolution of 1973. This law was written specifically to stop presidents from playing emperor. It requires the president to notify Congress within 48 hours of committing armed forces to military action and forbids them for remaining more than 60 days without congressional authorization. Trump didn't consult Congress. He didn't ask for a declaration of war. He simply acted. And this feckless, complicit Congress, terrified of his base, will likely do nothing as a result. But the darker threat is domestic. There is a straight line between invading Venezuela and what's coming home to roost in America. Watch closely for the invocation of the Insurrection Act. Unlike the War Powers Act, which limits power, the Insurrection Act grants the president the authority to deploy U.S. military troops inside the United States to suppress, quote, unlawful obstructions, unquote, or rebellion. They are practicing regime change abroad so they can perfect regime preservation at home. They are setting a precedent that the commander-in-chief is bound by no law, foreign or domestic. Now let's talk about the geopolitical fallout from this. Finally, we have to look at the signal this sends to the world, specifically to Beijing. If the United States declares that we can invade a sovereign nation in our quote-unquote sphere of influence simply because we want their resources, what stops China from doing the same to Taiwan? And let's look at the stakes there. Taiwan isn't just an island. It's the engine of the modern world. Taiwan produces over 60% of the world's semiconductors and over 90% of the advanced chips that run everything from your iPhone to the F-35 fighter jet. If China interprets our lawlessness as permission to move on Taiwan, we aren't just looking at a regional war. We are looking at a global economic depression that would make 2008 look like a hiccup. We are effectively dismantling the international order for a barrel of heavy crude. Folks, this is a dangerous moment. We are watching the fusion of corporate greed and authoritarian whim armed with the most powerful military in human history. They want the oil and they want the power and they want you and me to look away. And we're not going to look away. We're not going to turn a blind eye to this. We're not going to bow down to authoritarianism abroad, and we're sure as hell not going to bow down to it here at home. This is not unexpected, to be honest, given the run-up, given the bombings of the boats in the Caribbean and the very poorly hidden intent to enact regime change and go in for yet another oil grab in a foreign nation. We haven't actually overturned the regime yet. We've only gone in and grabbed the leader of Venezuela. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to be an apologist for Nicolas Maduro. He's not a good guy. I don't support him. I don't support his regime. But we had no business going in with our army in an unprovoked fashion and taking this action, particularly and especially because it's an action that was prompted by American corporations who contributed to buying off this regime during the 2024 election. So this is serious shit that we have to pay attention to, and we can't let this fascist regime spin their way out of it. We have to hold them accountable, and at some point, Congress is going to have to stand up, take its power back, and provide a check on this lawless president and his lawless minions. This is John Bell with The Reset. Keep fighting, stay strong, and stay safe. Take care.